Arcades were a huge part of my life growing up. I mean, who didn't love going to the arcade and playing games you simply could not play at home on a console? Sure, there were arcade ports since the days of Atari. You could play Pac-Man on the 2600, you could play some Snow Bros on the NES, but they just weren't the same. SNK changed that with the introduction of the Neo Geo AES. The AES was the same hardware as their MVS arcade unit, which was originally released and seen in arcades across Japan and North America in 1990. During this time, they also released the AES, but as a type of rental unit that businesses could use in hotels, bars, and restaurants. The public wanted access as well. So SNK heard those wanting arcade games in the living room loud and clear. The AES was released to home consumers about a year later and retailed for $649.99. Calculating that for inflation, this equals to over $1,200 in the year 2020. With such a huge price, the Neo Geo had to be a powerhouse of a machine for its time, and it definitely was. It had a color palette of 65,536 colors and could display up to 4,096 colors simultaneously with a max of 380 sprites on screen. Compare that to the color palette of the Super Nintendo, which had 32,768 colors and could display up to 256 colors with 128 sprites on screen at once. Definitely a beast of a machine. The Neo Geo was no slouch in audio either. It boasted an onboard Yamaha YM2610 sound chip, which gave the system 15 channels of sound. This was no ordinary video game console. This was an arcade in your home. A video game console only those with a higher level of disposable income could afford at the time. Growing up, this console was just a dream for me, and that dream had to stay playing the MVS version in the local arcade, unfortunately. The AES was manufactured and sold for about 6 years. SNK cut it off after having selling only about 1 million units worldwide. The Neo Geo AES doesn't even make an appearance in the top 40 consoles sold of all time. It sits with the Atari 5200, Telstar, and Philips CDI as far as top sellers go. Despite cutting off manufacturing and sales in 1997, SNK still supported the console with new games for 7 more years. In 2004, we saw the final official release for the Neo Geo AES with the launch of Samurai Shodown V Special. This release was not without controversy though. Originally scheduled to release on July 8, 2004, the release had to suffer a short delay in order for SNK to implement changes to the final version of the game. Some of the changes included censoring violent moves by removing the generic fatalities and watering down of other aspects of violence in the game. It appears there was pressure for SNK to censor this game due to a horrific incident that occurred just a month prior to its release. A murder occurred on June 1st, 2004, known as the Sasebo slashing, that involved a 12-year-old schoolgirl named Satomi Matarai, where an 11-year-old female classmate slit her throat and arms with a utility knife. The girl who murdered Satomi later confessed to the crime and stated it happened due to a supposed slander against her being posted on the internet. This incident caused a lot of media attention in Japan and prompted a lot of debate concerning age of criminal responsibility in the country. During this time, censorship became more strict within the film, television, and video game industries in Japan. With companies scrambling to implement forms of censorship into current projects they thought may be insensitive during this time, SNK wound up heavily editing Samurai Shodown V Special, and therefore delaying the release by a week as well. By doing so, they also caused a lot of bugs to be present in the shipped game, such as messed up animations, music that was no longer synchronized, and other glitches that wound up breaking the game entirely. This mess of a release caused a lot of fan outcry from those who purchased the game. SNK, after hearing from many upset fans, decided it would be best to recall the cartridge and fix the bugs that occurred due to the hastily implemented censorship. With the fixed version, SNK brought back the character-specific overkill moves that were removed. These fatality-type moves still were censored though, as they excluded the decapitation animations. This overkill move was one of numerous gameplay changes that were added to Samurai Shodown V Special over the previous release of Samurai Shodown V. The special version of 5 implemented a lot of tweaks to create a more balanced gameplay experience over its predecessor. If done correctly, an overkill move would instantly kill the opposing character no matter the amount of life they had. In order to do this move correctly, you have to be in the final round, be in Rage Explosion, and your opponent's health has to be below where they could enter Concentration 1. Concentration 1 allowed you to enter a state of meditation where time slowed down for the opposing character. Learning these techniques, especially the function of the overkill move, was vital in order to complete the game. So to fight each of the bosses and get the non-bad ending, where the credits are shown, you would have to perform an overkill on each of the bosses in order to fight the true final boss, Mizuki. Samurai Shodown V Special is an odd game in that there's no real plot, dialogue between characters, or any character-specific endings. It really was just a fighter with no fluff. Among some of the other notable changes from the standard release of 5 was the recycled stages from 3 and 4 were removed. There are no character-specific stages in this game, except for the bosses. And like the stages, recycled music from 3 and 4 were also removed, with only bosses having specific songs during their battles. Ultimately, I think Samurai Shodown V Special is an interesting game. Despite the controversy surrounding it and some odd choices in design, it's a game I enjoy playing occasionally. It does scratch that fighting game itch from time to time. Definitely not my favorite of the series, but gets that unique notation in gaming history of being the final official release Neo Geo AES game, which was also surrounded by controversy. If you're interested in playing Samurai Shodown V Special, there's many ways to try it out. Options to play it via emulation, unofficially or officially, official releases, or on the original hardware. But if you want to play the game in its restored, uncensored state, I definitely recommend checking it out on the PlayStation 4 or PS Vita. The game was released digitally a few years ago for those platforms with some extra content thrown in, including online multiplayer. I'm a big fan of the Samurai Shodown franchise. I've been digging it for many years. I know a lot of you guys do as well. So hey, really do appreciate you guys hanging out with me on this video. We'll catch you next time.